Ahniwake Rose worked in Washington, D.C. for nearly 15 years on behalf of Native American tribes. Although she's no longer on the Hill, Ahniwake continues to expand opportunities for others in hopes of creating a more equitable future.
Any Native person that walks into a space, in almost any room, knows that they're probably the only Native person in that space. So you don't just get to be your tribe. You don't just get to share your stories. It's about who we're working on behalf of and reminding everyone when we're in that room that this is not on behalf of us, this is on behalf of our 7 generations down. My name is Ahniwake Rose. I am a citizen of Cherokee Nation and also of Muskogee Creek descent, and I am the executive director of the Oklahoma Policy Institute. The National Indian Education Association, I was the executive director. And at the National Congress of American Indians, I was a policy analyst, I was the legislative director, and then my last term there, I was the deputy director and the interim executive director. I grew up in Osiyo, not too far outside of Tulsa, with my younger brother and my mom and dad. And it was as average as probably average could be. My dad worked for Southwest Airlines when I was younger and was transferred to Arizona. And we were the first ones in our family to ever leave Oklahoma, and it was the big to-do. When we reached the first reservation, I remember him telling me about the fight for federal dollars and the requirements that were in their treaties as well as our treaties. And I remember crying, not understanding why we had been treated that way, not understanding why the federal government wasn't holding up its responsibility. I knew at that moment that no matter what I did in my life, I was going to make sure it was to give back to our people. I've been really lucky in making sure that, since then I've always worked for tribes. There's really not been a job or position I've taken that hasn't directly impacted or directly worked with tribal nations. When I first got to DC, I didn't understand how it was almost a day-to-day fight to try to keep our programs funded across the board. The very first bill I had a chance to work on was the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act that they had been working on for 15 years to reauthorize. 15 years that our hospital systems and our healthcare systems hadn't been updated. 15 years of warriors that had gone up to the Hill and screaming and yelling about how our people were dying and no one listening. In Navajo Nation, if it rains, the kids can't get to school because the roads are flooded out or washed out, but the school's not closing, so the kids still have to figure out how to get there even though the buses can't get there. When you start hearing those day-to-day stories about how federal dollars and the lack of federal policy is not supporting our children, our elders, and our communities, there's no way that you can do anything but want to stay and fight every single day for them. And then watching how states might or might not be implementing that in the best way. And so it made a lot of sense for me to come full circle and come back and work for the state. So the Oklahoma Policy Institute is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. Their job is to ensure that accurate data is being shared with legislatures and with the community on policies that are being worked on with the Oklahoma State Legislature. We think about politics much more as a hobby now. My team's winning versus your team's winning. And Oklahoma Policy Institute, we don't view it that way. Our job is to go out and talk to Oklahomans. Our job is to go out and to figure out how you're feeling and how we can get you to a place where our data is going to help you make the best decision. Because politics should not impact how the issues are impacting our day-to-day lives. I could not move back to Oklahoma without it being a deeply personal choice as well. I also have 2 young daughters, and so having a chance to bring them home, not only to know culturally who they are, but also just knowing aunties and uncles, knowing grandparents. I love being who we are. I love having this connection to a people and a place and the land. And I'm so excited to have been able to bring my daughters back here so that they can understand what that means themselves. am a huge believer in purpose, and that our Creator definitely opens doors that we need to walk through. I keep a leadership mantra stuck on my keyboard, and it changes, right, based on where I'm at in the circumstances. And so my mantra right now is, who can I make space for at the table? I take my mentorship and the opportunity to create space for young Native women, and frankly, any young voice, incredibly seriously. If we're not providing space for you, then we're not doing what our responsibility is. I was lucky enough that people invited me to the table. I was lucky enough that people decided to teach me what they felt like I needed to know, and so now that's my turn.